Hey, cinema studies people, how are you doing?
Yeah, somehow I got to figure out how to mute this thing. Boom, there we go. Now I can actually.
Okay,
Was hearing ourselves in like tape delay there. Hey everybody,
great.
this is very strange.
Yeah, Kredell has a great camera, and I'm in a basement somewhere, so that tells you about our technological prowess.
Keep the messages
Stick
coming
them in
in the
there.
chat here too. This is great. Hi to
Cool. Hi, everybody.
hi to Maddie and Michaela and Brian and Taylor. Um, Make sure to smash the likes and subscribe and buy stuff from our affiliate links.
Yeah, we make a lot of money when you do that. Not.
Today we're going to be talking about Toronto Film Festival. It's hard to know who's
Yeah,
here right now, but I see that 7 people are here right now. And of those of you who are here, many of you know quite a bit about the Toronto Film Festival. But we can rehearse the details, and then we're also saving this live stream so that people who can't be live with us now are going to be able to watch this later. So if we're going over details that seem to be duplicative for those of you who've been to TIFF before. It's because we're imagining an audience that's not just live in this chat at the moment, but also one that's going to be tuning in at a later date.
yeah, and we can try our best to answer questions via the chat. There may be a little bit delay on that as we sort of read through our notes and look down at the chat. The other thing is, I think there's like a 3 to 5 second delay on us too. So if you see us doing weird things or saying odd things or interrupting each other, that's probably why. Apologies in advance for that.
We also wanted to say that following this live stream, we're going to do a Google Hangouts meet. The link for that is on the YouTube in the description of the live stream. So we'll both move over there, and so if you guys want to either video or audio into that chat, if you have specific questions that can't be handled through the sidebar over there, then let us know and we'll try and get to those there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I also didn't
Yeah,
notice until right now, Professor Edwards, that you're totally on brand today with your T-shirt. So I feel like I dressed inappropriately for this.
always. Yes. We've got 7 of these shirts.
Cheers to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you want to get started with the slides? Is that the best way to do this?
Yeah. Why don't you click through
Okay.
well, why don't you do the first couple? The couple things I want to say though before we start is that the trip is still happening. So if anybody's concerned about that, for all intents and purposes, and as far as we know, the trip is still going on. And at the end of the slides, or near the end, we're going to talk about how to apply. For those of you who haven't been on the trip before, we'll give you a few more details on that. But also, we're here to help, so you can always email us. But then you can also email the international education people. They know a little bit more about the website and the application process than we do, and they've been pretty responsive. So we can provide the email addresses for those people as well. But anyway, Brendan, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so this year, the dates for Toronto are later than they have been in the past because we've got a late Labor Day this year. Because we have a late Labor Day this year, the university is starting its academic year earlier than it usually does. So for those of you who've been in the past, you'll know that ordinarily we are leaving for Toronto the first Thursday of the school year. So class usually starts on a Wednesday. We're getting on the bus on a Thursday, and off we go. That's different this year because we'll be starting earlier, and that means you'll have a few days in your classes before we depart, which is a good thing. So you'll get to know your professors. This year, TIFF is happening on Thursday, September 10th, through, at least for us, the following Wednesday, September 16th. TIFF goes on until the following weekend, I think the 19th or the 20th this year. For those of you who don't know much about TIFF, who haven't been before, it's North America's most important film festival, in large part because of where it sits in the calendar. It's the it's kind of perfectly placed for the beginning of award season. Most films that end up being nominated for Academy Awards premiere, at least their North American premiere, at the Toronto Festival. And that means there's a huge publicity apparatus in place there. But it's not just the Oscar films. There are many, many, many films being screened at Toronto each year. Nowadays, roughly about 400 films that are happening, coming from over 80 countries. And I think a thing that you don't realize until you go there is just how massive the festival is. There are quite a few people there who are coming from all over the world, really, who work in the media industries. And so there are about 7,500 accredited industry delegates at the festival. All of us who will be there in the fall will have that accreditation as industry delegates, which means we'll be able to get into industry events during the festival. But in addition to those 7,500 people, almost 500,000 people attend the festival from the public. And that's really one of the things that makes TIFF so remarkable, is that it's both a hugely important industry festival, but at the same time, it's a massive public festival. And those of you who have gone before will know that the streets are just swarmed with people, and it becomes really like a festival-like atmosphere. It's really an exciting place to be. If this is your first film festival, it's kind of hard to go to any one after this, because it's a big letdown from this one. But our students have a great time every year, and we're really looking forward to going back this fall.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kyle, do you want to talk about the information on departure and what have you?
Sure. So, as Brendan said, the trip this year is starting the 10th and ending the 16th. That means we leave bright and early on the morning of the 10th. I think that's a Thursday. There'll be a group bus that'll take us out to Toronto. We'll go over the border, and hopefully we all make it through. And once we do, we arrive in Toronto on that afternoon. We stay in a hostel. So those of you who went last year, it's the same hostel again this year. It's very conveniently located. I can say that about it. And the people that work there are very nice. If you haven't stayed in a hostel, we can talk more about that with you at some point. But it's you're basically in a group room with usually between 4 and 6 people. You'll get to know them very well. They'll become great friends to you, we hope, and that often does happen. But once we arrive, we do have an orientation dinner, in which we tell you a little bit more about the festival and talk about our schedule for the week. And then you're not necessarily completely on your own, but then you just start seeing films. You start going to industry conference sessions, doing all the other fun stuff around Toronto. There'll be a few assignments you'll probably have to complete during that week as you're doing that. But you'll get the hang of it really fast if you haven't gone. And there's always a few people at the festival with us in our group. Sometimes it's a sizable portion of the group that's been there before. And so they're often a very big help for the people who haven't been there before. Because the lines are kind of tricky to navigate sometimes, at least at the beginning, your first day or two, but you'll get the hang of it really quickly. And you'll likely check in with us, maybe once a day while you're there. And we're around to help if any problems arise or you want to chat or anything. But for the most part, you're on your own and just navigating the festival screenings, the master classes, the conference sessions, and things like that until we reconvene for a closing dinner in Toronto, which is always a lot of fun. We get to talk about what everybody's seen, what and who everybody's seen, what directors or stars they've seen. And then we leave bright and early the next Wednesday, the 16th, and return back to OU that afternoon. So you miss about a week of classes. We give you a note to share with your professors. For many of you who are film majors, we are your professors, or we know your professors, so they're really good about letting out a class. But it's a university excused absence, and that means you still have to complete the work, but the absences themselves are excused. And we give you a note that lays that all out in detail for the professors. So anyway, that's it for the schedule, at least in broad strokes. But we could probably talk about Toronto a little bit further, unless I missed anything, Brendan.
No, no, and that's a great segue because this next slide is a map of Toronto.
I somehow knew that,
Yeah,
but yeah.
you're the man with the plan. What you all are looking at right now is a map of the downtown core of Toronto. And in the corner there, lower left hand corner, you'll see a yellow circle. That's the hostel. And so, to give you a sense of proximity, the main screening venues are located within a couple of blocks radius of the intersection of King Street West and John Street. So you'll see a number of blue circles with film strips on them right in there. That's about a 5-minute walk from your hostel. 2 long blocks, basically. And I think our students this past year found this to be super convenient. That you could basically roll out of bed, grab a coffee, and be at a film screening in a matter of minutes. So that's a huge advantage. That being said, the festival, as I mentioned, is massive. With 400 films screening, that's taking place all over the city. And in fact, there are theaters that aren't even visible on this map because they're far enough removed from where the rest of the screening venues are. Particularly, this is of note, a lot of people go to Midnight Madness screenings, which take place at Ryerson University in Toronto, which is just northeast of the area that this map depicts. So it could be that depending on the schedule that you set for yourself, you've got a bit of a walk ahead of you. And we want to mention that ahead of time in case there's anybody with accessibility concerns. It's something that we've been able to work out in the past, but we encourage you, if that is a concern, to get in touch with us because there is a lot of walking involved and potentially a significant amount of walking depending on how far-flung your screenings are. But now that our hostel is so centrally located, and given that the screening sites are for the most part clustered within the same area, we find that a lot of students end up spending the vast majority of their time basically wandering within about a 4-block stretch north to south along John Street, and then 2 blocks in either direction, either to get to their beds to sleep at the end of the night or to get food during the day. So it has become a much more compact footprint than it used to be. And that's to the advantage.
Yes.
Okay. You want to talk about this, Kyle? The program, what's included, what isn't included?
Yeah. So with your program fee, and we'll talk about a little bit about what those fees are, but also when they're due, because that's changed somewhat. But when you pay your full program fee eventually by at some point in the summer, that includes your stay at Clarence Park. So all, was it 6 nights? Your transportation on that group bus. So the charter bus is included in that. If you need to cover any transportation while you're in Toronto, like you want to take an Uber somewhere or the public transportation, we do not cover that. I don't know. The other students might be able to speak to the fact that whether you use much public transportation while you're there or not, but that's certainly an option if you need it. We get a great deal on a festival badge, so that's included in the program fee as well, in part because we're an educational unit and we buy a lot of them at once. So that's included. And then we also schedule master class, and typically that's somebody who is a filmmaker at the festival or someone involved with TIFF in some capacity. And so they give our group an exclusive session where they talk a little bit about their career and what they do. We have plenty of time to ask them questions. Often we'll also have a chance to watch their film at some point during the week, so it's really fun to do that. So that session is included. And then those opening and closing meals as well. And those are usually bigger group dinners as well. There's also a course associated with TIFF. So those of you who've been before know about that. If you've already taken the TIFF course, we'll need to talk to you about what options you have. You can certainly go again and apply again to the TIFF program, but we'll talk a little bit further about your options with respect to that. You still want to make sure you apply through the normal channels through the International Education site as well. Otherwise, your meals in Toronto, outside of those opening and closing meals, you want to cover on your own. And then also you want to make sure if you don't have one, get a passport or an enhanced ID. If you already have them, great. If you're getting an enhanced ID, the only thing you should know is that that just covers you on the ground, getting back and forth between the States and Canada. You can't fly with an enhanced ID outside of the United States, but it will cover you on the bus here and back. And then, of course, all the souvenirs you want to buy. That's up to you. Let's see. Now, a couple things about the fees themselves. Typically, we require a $500 deposit around mid-May. We've extended that a couple weeks till the 1st of June because we've extended the application deadline to April 26th. If we have to extend any deadlines further, we'll certainly extend that as well. The one thing to keep in mind about that deposit is it's non-refundable in the sense that if you apply and you're accepted and you're planning to go and the trip is happening in September and then you drop out, we're not able to give that deposit back. However, if you apply and for whatever reason, we all know the circumstances right now, for whatever reason the trip doesn't happen, you will get that fee back. So that is refundable if the trip doesn't happen. We're not going to keep all the money. So we definitely keep you up to date once you apply on what the status of the trip is. As far as we know, everything's happening on schedule. It's just we're extending the application deadline and the first deposit deadline. The final portion of the payment is typically in mid-July, and as far as we know, that's the same schedule as we have now. But as things progress and as we know more about when we're going to reconvene as an institution and what's going on with the festival itself, we'll definitely keep you updated. May have covered some of that here in this timeline too.
Sorry, I was slow on the draw in getting our slides changed from one to the next. I think one thing that I did want to briefly mention about the border crossing, since it came up just a second ago with respect to the passports and enhanced IDs, it's something we like to repeat each year, even though we hope it isn't an issue. But you should be aware that Canada and the United States have slightly different entry requirements. Specifically, there are some things that Canada will not permit entry if you have on your record, notably driving under the influence is something that they may choose not to allow someone to enter the country if you have a DUI on your record. So if you have any reason to think that you may be at risk of not being permitted to cross the border into Canada, you should reach out to Professor Edwards and I. This is something that we can screen ahead of time through IE, International Education, and often get guidance on this, so you don't find yourself in the position where you're stuck at the border and you can't get into Canada. But we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we've got a bus full of people heading to Toronto and one person is going to get stuck at Sarnia, Ontario, and need to somehow get transported back to Rochester. So be alert to that. Please let us know ahead of time. Okay, so we've got the timeline stuff taken care of. Then Kai, do you want to talk some about how the application process has changed a little bit?
Sure. So as I said, we've extended the deadline 3 weeks. It really helps us if you at least start the application, because we get notification that of everybody who started their application, even if they haven't finished it. Our recommendation to you, if you're planning to go or you think you might go, is to go ahead and start the application, even if you don't have time to finish it immediately. So we have a sense of how many people are likely to apply. Now, there's an idiosyncrasy, I think, in the application process this year, in that they've moved to a new website. So if you've gone before, I think this is how it works. If you've been to TIFF before and you previously applied, you would need to apply again, but you use that alternate URL. And once you click through on that, you'll notice that familiar, very old-looking website that they were using, that I can still get into, and that Professor Kredell and I can use to see who's applied and see who's finished their applications. So I would look at both of those links and see which ones works for you, because I know some people have been shut out, and that's likely because you have set up your account through that old website. If you would be going for the first time, I think you would try to use the new URL and set up an account. Uh, and you just get there by clicking on those links and following the Apply Now buttons. They'll ask you a few questions, and then you can go ahead and start your application. There is an application fee of zero, so that's a good deal. So I just wanted to stress that there's not really a commitment in applying. We certainly, if you do apply, we're hoping that you do attend, and we do screen all applications to make sure that we have enough room for everybody and that all the applications are in order. Uh, that first part of the application involves a few details, and there, I think that's the second image I have on this slide, and that's the type of questions they're asking on that program application. And some of them are written, uh, and we are interested in your answers on that. So please do your best. It's not like a college essay requirement or anything like that, or a formal essay for a class. But we were just interested in what your what why you are interested in going, what types of things you want to get out of the trip, and so do your best to answer those. You don't have to take hours and hours on it. The goal is just to complete it to the best of your ability. And then once you're have applied and finished your application, we review it, and if you're admitted, then there are additional enrollment forms to complete between the end of April through June 1st, and a lot of those are you checking different boxes with respect to the clearances that international education needs to authorize you to go. There's some liability forms and things like that. So they're somewhat time consuming to complete. They're not necessarily difficult. But the first stage is that program application, which is due on the 26th. What am I missing here?
I think just this one last thing, which is
Okay.
Grizz Dance. Speaking of
Yes.
the course that people will be taking at the end, and shout out to Maddie and to Michaela and to Taylor and all the people I see on the chat here who are intimately involved with Grizz Dance this past year. So, for those of you who aren't aware, this was the film festival that SVP put on in conjunction with Cinema Studies this year for OU filmmakers as well as high school filmmakers from around the region. And this film festival was programmed by members of the TIFF trip. And so we thought it went really well, and we'd like to give it another shot. So what we're going to do this fall, after we get back from Toronto, is that those of you who are coming on the trip will then shift gears from being participants in a film festival as as audience members to being programmers at a film festival. And we'll be talking much more about that in the weeks and months ahead. But I wanted to give you guys the heads up now that that'll be happening most likely towards the end of 2020, so that we'll have a chance to have a festival of our own at OU. All right. And with that, we can come back to the live shot. And so if you've got questions, please leave them in the chat here. We can address them as we see them. So what do we got here? We got.
I was just saying, just check in with you for more details about that course. If they have any questions about the requirements, and you can check in with Brendan or I if you're a current student and going back to TIFF, because I think what we're doing for that is that you'll have the opportunity to take a very credit independent study.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need 4 credits, you can take a 4-credit independent study. If you don't need 4 credits, you only need 1 or 2. We can set that up for you. And any requirements you'd have for that course would be completed during TIFF week. So that's one difference, that if you've gone to TIFF and taken that TIFF course, you wouldn't need to take the course again, but you would be enrolled in something. And then you'd have the option, I think this is right, Brendan,
Mm-hmm.
you'd have the option of helping out with Grizz Dance later that semester if you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So I'm seeing questions here.
I think the max is 24, right? As far as we know, is that?
Yes, 24 is the max in terms of the number of beds that we have in the hostel. Now, the person who's asking this question is going to be an alum in the fall, and we hope. Make sure you get good grades in your classes, Taylor. It is it's possible for alumni to come and arrange for their own housing, and that's something that we encourage any alums who are interested in that to get in touch with Professor Edwards and I. But in terms of students or alums who would like to stay in the hostel with students, yeah, the limit is 24 beds, and we prioritize current students there. So alums should be aware of that. That if we find that we've got 24 alums, then I'm sorry, 24 students, then that will fill up our space in the hostel.
Yeah, we typically do have room, but yeah, that's something we just need to figure out, and that's why it helps to start your application and complete it as early as you can, just because it helps us have an idea of that number uh, and how much space we're going to need.
I see Brian Westergaard wants to know if Joey Klein's going to be there. I'm sure Joey Klein will be very happy to hear that you asked that, and he will probably rearrange his calendar to be there just to see you, Brian. So I'll send him a message.
He may be staying at the hostel too.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And Taylor, you don't have to graduate if you don't want to.
No.
You see it. You think it's sad to graduate. Stay with us.
Yeah.
You can stay at OU. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. Okay. So we got multiple alums. I got a message a second ago over email from Lydia Hanna. Good to see your name on my email, Lydia. And I saw that Sean Foe was in the mix here earlier too. And another Taylor Stinson. So it sounds like we may have a nice contingent of alums, which is great. I mean, I think one of the things that's really come together with this trip is the sense of community that's built around the OU Cinema program that has been really exciting to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Could we send the link to the older website to apply? Yeah, that is in the slides. And what we can do is circulate an email to this. Do we have a list?
I did send an email. I can check the chat list too, and we probably have most of your emails. But I did send an email last night. I'm not sure if everybody got it because some messages bounced back to me. But that has the links in it too. So if you check your email and you find something from me or your spam, if you're screening out my emails, you can find all those links as well.
And shout out to Wyatt Key, my personal stylist. I can't see what you're wearing, Wyatt, but I'm sure it's a Banana Republic shirt as well. Yes, Michaela, the question about independent study students who want to work on Grizz Dance, obviously I expect that you will be working on Grizz Dance, Michaela. Michaela will be instrumental to making sure that happens next year. But for anybody else who is interested in going on the trip, but who will be taking it as an independent study and not as part of the TIFF course, we have a lot of flexibility with our independent studies in terms of organizing it, what the work plan for the independent study is. And so it will be entirely possible to set up independent studies that are basically festival programming independent studies.
Yep. That's just something you'd want to coordinate with us beforehand. You can start your application anyway and apply, but when it comes time to register for those courses, you would just correspond with us and we can figure out what the course is, what the title is, how many credits, what the expectations are, and all that good stuff.
All of that good stuff.
Can't wait.
I see that it is 12:30, which is the time that we advertised that we'd switch over to the Google Meetup. So perhaps we can put a pause on the questions here. For anyone who is interested in chatting further, the link to the Google Meet is in the description. So just enter that in to your browsers and that should bring up the Google Hangouts Meet interface. Now, a thing to note though is you need, I believe, to be logged in using an oakland.edu address in order to access the call. And something that I've learned over the last week is that for those of you who may be having internet connectivity problems at home, you should also be able to call into those Google Meetups, and the information should be available at the link. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our live stream. Thank you, Professor Edwards, for being my co-host for this live stream. This was exciting.
I can leave my bunker now.
Yeah.
I can't wait. See daylight.
All right, I'm going to end the stream, but we'll see you all hopefully over on Google Meetups, and then again in the fall. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, and stay well. Keep us connected. Tell us how you're doing, even though we're not going to be able to see each other for a little while.
Yeah. All right, be well, everyone, and stay healthy.
Bye, everybody.